Hey, welcome back to another episode with Raf King from Living Kinetics. Today, we're talking about structural integration, otherwise known as Rolfing. So this is kind of like the deep tissue of deep tissue, right? Oftentimes we throw around the term deep tissue massage, and a lot of the times that's referring to like a very deep Swedish massage, which I do recommend to like combine your Swedish massage with what we're about to talk about here because it makes for an amazing modality and an amazing effect on the body. But structural integration itself is an incredibly heavy pressure, deep tissue type of massage, and it can have some radical effects on the body. Ida Rolf is the one who came up with this concept. Of course, we hear the term Rolfing, right? And that comes from her name. She was instrumental in bringing this to the forefront of the massage world. And in fact, my structural integration instructor, I want to say, was a either second or third generation Rolfer, right? So he really wasn't that far down the lineage from the person who invented this modality. So it's super cool. I feel super blessed to have his knowledge, and that guy was amazing. Like his teaching abilities were just off the charts, right? But let's get into some of the techniques and what makes this different from the other styles. So when we talked about Swedish massage, we came up with 5 classic strokes, and really it was 6 when you break it down. And from those strokes, you had like a nice gliding stroke, non-gliding stroke. You had like a stroke that created heat, percussive type of stroke, and a vibration stroke, right? When it comes to structural, you really have one type of stroke, but you're going to use different tools with that, right? So a lot of the time, you're going to use an incredibly deep effleurage. And I shouldn't just say it's only incredibly deep. We use a concept where you're kind of working into the tissue, right? So you might start off, medium to heavy pressure, but you're essentially working your way to an incredible depth in the body. And how we normally do this is you might want to start off with some knuckles, move to a forearm or an elbow, then to your knuckles, and then to your fingertips. And a lot of what this is going to do is you're going to get down deep into the fascial layers of the body, right? This is the connective tissue that holds you together. At some point, we're going to go over lectures for the anatomy trains, and this is the connective tissue that runs throughout your entire body that allows you to function, that holds everything together and creates or helps create movement. A lot of the times we talk about muscles with movement, and when we talk about support, we talk about the bones, but the fascial layer, the connective tissue, I find this to be so incredibly intricate, and it's an oftentimes overlooked subject when talking anatomy and function, right? So structural is going to have a huge impact on posture and how we function, right? A lot of the times I like to think about structural integration as kind of like chiropractic care for massage therapists. Now, obviously, it's not chiropractic care. We're not, doing a lot of these very quick movements or anything. In fact, it's incredibly slow. And the deeper you go, the slower you go. So, I mean, there are times in a massage, if you have an hour set aside, you might not do that many strokes compared to, say, a Swedish massage, where you can do an incredible amount of strokes throughout it because we're going very slow because we aren't moving. We're not necessarily being gentle with the body, right? We're actually being very direct with what we want. And this is all about creating that length and giving enough pressure so it will happen. Now, oftentimes you have to work with the body to do this. It's not just like bulldozing over it, although sometimes it feels like it, right? My instructor that I was telling you about who taught me this, he would do these 10 sessions with a lot of his clients. And these 10 sessions were designed to correct the posture of the person and so that they could function better. And it always cracked me up because when you would see the before picture, the person would have like this like terrible posture, right? But they were always smiling. Like they were happy to start this. They were happy to get their life back on track. And after the 10 weeks, they would do an after photo. And the person had like fantastic posture. Everything was leveled out. but they were never smiling because it can be quite an intense process, right? You're creating an incredible amount of pressure to place onto the body, and it can be, it's not painful. We don't like to use that word, but it can be very intense. But the repercussions from it are amazing. Like you could have like when your posture is corrected and when you're using your body and it's kind of like in its natural state versus taking on everything that we've done to it over the years, right? The sitting in cars, driving places, the sitting at desks. I don't know. Most of us, as we watch TV or watch movies, we just have the worst posture. Like, no one's worried about that, right? You're just kind of like laying out on the couch. You might have like a shoulder creaked up or something like that. Like, none of us are worried about that, but it does have an effect on our performance. And this could happen over a long, long time, and we don't even notice it, but it does affect us. Something structural can help out with is, let's say, you've developed scoliosis throughout time, right? And not necessarily that you were born with it, right? But you had a good spine when you were born, and over time, you just sat in the dumbest ways possible, or you stood in weird ways, right? And this is something that could help correct that. Now, oftentimes in the practice, we not only go over how to view the body and take notes on that, right? So like someone who practices a lot of structural integration can look at somebody and instantly know what's out about their posture because they practice viewing so much. But what oftentimes goes along with that, and some videos that I've actually done for you on this channel, we give the person exercises. Now, a lot of the times, it's not viewed in the massage world that we could give exercises, and I think that's baloney, right? I think we can absolutely give people exercises. A lot of times with assessment techniques as well. Like I've gotten into debates about other massage instructors about, can we assess the body? We cannot diagnose it. I can't send you away with a diagnosis telling you what's wrong with your body. I can assess you though, and I can create a game plan based off that assessment. And I can give you exercises based off that assessment. Just as a massage professional, that's totally within our scope of practice. And a lot of the time, structural integrationists use these exercises to help benefit the work that they're doing. Because let's face it, let's say that we did some really heavy strokes, moving away from the midline on the chest right here to help spread the chest out. Because we all have those like rounded shoulder type of posture. It's so natural for us because everything we do is in front of us, with whether it's a video that we're making right now, or you're at the computer watching this video, or you're driving somewhere later, or you're massaging somebody. Like it's so easy to round the shoulders forward. But let's say we moved all this back with an amazing structural session. It doesn't do anybody any favors if you can't keep that posture. Like if you have to keep coming back, then what was the point of it? And I hear this a lot about chiropractic care and massage therapy, where people say something like, I hear once you start it, you can't stop. You have to keep going back. And that is true if you're not correcting the problem, right? If you're not looking at the thing that is giving you that poor posture, giving you that pain, and you continually do it, then yeah, of course you're going to need to do this for the rest of your life, because you haven't corrected the cause. You're correcting the symptom, right? So I feel like a lot of the times in structural integration, they attack the symptom head on, which is a beautiful thing. But then they also give you enough education and material to start acting on the problem as well, which I think we all need in our lives in a big way. But this style differs heavily from the Swedish style and even the Russian style. I mean, more so from the Swedish style, because it's so direct. You're using 4 tools, but really just one stroke, right? You're just using a deep gliding stroke. And to emphasize how much control and how much depth you're using with something like this, so 2 quick things. One, as we worked, we didn't put lotion on the body, which we talked about with Swedish and with Russian, right? Where you put lotion on the body and then you would start working. When it comes to structural integration, Rolfing, you lotion your tool, so you might lotion your knuckles or your fist here, and you don't lotion the body. And then you go to work on it, right? So it's so you're not slipping and sliding around, because you're trying to create so much pressure there that if you were to slip, you might injure yourself or the client, right? Now, second story here. And I guess it's not always just gliding strokes. There are some pinning strokes that they do as well, right? Where we might pin down on the body and have somebody move through some range of motion, right? With some fingertips or some knuckles, something like that. Good example of this is when when we were learning to work the psoas muscle, psoas major, right? And this is a muscle, if you haven't seen my anatomy video, that sits in front of the spine, deep into the body. Oh, you got something to add here? My puppy's here. You got something to add, huh? Yeah, you want to be in the video too? You want some structural? What you want? Oh, you want dinner? Okay. Okay. You goofball. So when we were learning to work the psoas major muscle, and if you didn't see my other anatomy video, this muscle sits in front of the spine, deep in the abdomen here, and it's responsible for hip flexion. Okay, and this is an important muscle to stretch out to learn about because it can be the culprit in a lot of low back pain, especially for somebody who sits a lot. You can also kind of see the effect of this with the pelvis, right? Whether it and there's some debate about this, whether it's like a tilt posteriorly or anteriorly. I think it can be present with both of them, especially considering when a weak muscle can act like a tight muscle and vice versa. But oftentimes, again, deviated position of the pelvis and low back pain are oftentimes big indicators for a weak or tight psoas muscle. So when we were learning to work this, and in fact, we worked past this, we were working the anterior longitudinal ligament. This is a ligament that sits on the anterior portion of the spine, the front of the spine, and it helps give support to the spine, right? And this is something that we wanted to help lengthen out. And just to show you what kind of depth that we're working with here, so I'm working through the abdomen, just making these small circles, giving more and more pressure as I go, just to help move the organs out of the way. Got down to this hard structure. And as I was there, I called the instructor over and I'm like, what is this? Like, what? And he's like, you've made it. Like that's the front of his spine that you're feeling right there. Like you've made it down far enough that you're working the anterior longitudinal ligament. You don't need to work any further. Like that's all you're gonna go anyways. Like you can't go any deeper than that. And it was amazing to me because that's what, like, the first time it really clicked, just how much depth we're creating with the body. But again, this is all very slow and it's very technical and it takes a lot of practice. And this isn't something that like with Swedish massage, I could teach somebody effleurage and maybe some petrissage and tell them to avoid certain areas and they'd be fine to do a session. Like I really like massage is very intuitive, but structural, being a massage modality, is not necessarily intuitive. It takes patience, it takes practice, it takes guidance in a big way. But to help push kind of the effects of something like this. So one of the first times we were doing a structural session, I remember working with somebody who had some pretty significant stuff going on with their body, right? And we were working the Achilles tendon. This is the tendon just above your heel, right? Calcanean tendon might be another name for it. And I remember her having kind of like this C shape to her tendon. Like her calves moved medially, right? There was like, they were kind of brought to the inside of the body and like the tendons like kind of followed it, right? And what you do to help out something like this is you actually place, everything is stacked in this modality, by the way. Like there's like in Swedish you can kind of get away with reaching a little bit as you do something, but everything in this modality, you're stacking your body over what you're doing, right? So my body is going to be direct, like my chest is going to be over what my fist is doing. Like every time, nice straight arm, everything is stacked up, everything, there's no deviation, there's no weak link in my joints, in my tools that I'm using. And for something like this, what I would do is you would stack over the Achilles tendon, you would place it in between these two knuckles right here, and you would move yourself back over the tendon, over the heel, right? And that's another thing that kind of differs from other modalities is a lot of the times in massage, you're working forward, and you're stepping forward with it. In structural, you might actually be stepping back into your techniques to help use your body weight in a certain way, which isn't that amazing or astounding, but it is kind of cool in the sense of like other modalities don't utilize it very much, but it's really big in the structural game. So I did three strokes on her Achilles tendon, and it went from a C shape to straightened out. And that was like definitely the first time that I respected this modality in a way that I hadn't respected others, because like, especially starting off with like, you get this in the very last part of your education, right? Like you have to have been trained up at this point to get to this. So when you're starting in your first quarter and you're taking like Swedish massage or something, like oftentimes when you get done with the session, the person's like, yeah, I feel good. I feel better. I feel loose, but like when you get done with structural, like you're drained, you're hungry, but you can see significant differences in how this person is standing, how they're moving, right? I mean, there are times when somebody would like lock out their knees or something like that. And by doing certain strokes along the body, they weren't able to like stand with their knees locked out anymore, which you should not be doing. Don't stand with your knees locked out. And it was just amazing because you saw these immediate and significant reactions to the work, instead of like feeling it over time. Like you could see it right now, and it was apparent and it was present. And I have a lot of respect for this modality. I don't use it as much, or I should say I use it, but I mix it in with other stuff, much like how I talked about with our Russian modality. I kind of take Russian and structural and put them together to kind of weave them in and blend together with Swedish. Because a lot of the times what people are looking for is they're looking for that connectivity that Swedish gives, but they also want the extreme benefits that, say, structural or Russian will give. And it's not fair to just do one. I mean, don't get me wrong. There are some cases where like you're looking to get structural, you want a total pro, you want somebody who went to a school who just focuses on structural integration. And if that's what you want, fantastic. Like, I think that's awesome. But when I look at massage therapists who went to my sort of school, where we got training over everything, like most modalities, right? I don't think it's wise to cut yourself short. And I know in a lot of ways people think that like, well, if I specialize in something, I'm going to be special in it, right? I'm going to have a specialty and I'm going to be the best at it. And although I can agree with that, I also come with the attitude of like, if you only have a hammer, right, everything starts to look like a nail. And I like to be able to adjust myself to different environments, different clients, different needs. And I like to be able to draw from all of these. And it's okay if I'm not better than you at it, but I'll be better in most cases. Because when it comes to this whole like jack of all trades but a master of none, oftentimes people leave out that second part of the phrase is oftentimes more useful than a master of one. I want to be useful to as much of the population as possible. And if I have to refer to a specialist, that's fine. That's okay. If it's totally out of my expertise, that's okay. But I'm also of the mindset, and I believe it was Bruce Lee who said this, that I fear not the man who's practiced 10,000 kicks once. I fear the man who's practiced one kick 10,000 times. And I'm very much about the basics. And I've been doing this for like about 14 years at this point. I have practiced the basics over and over and over and over and over again. So I might not have the most state-of-the-art type of technique or movement that you would get from a specialist, but I can use the basics in a way that I know can generate a benefit, that can generate change for somebody. But, I guess that's neither here nor there, really. But I encourage you to check out structural integration, also called Rolfing, and I encourage you to ask your massage therapist about it. It might be something that you need. You might need a little more pressure behind some of those strokes in certain areas. You might need to correct some posture quickly in a big way. So I encourage you to talk to them about that. And I also encourage you to check out my book, because it's got a whole sorts of stories in there and nonsense that I've gone through over all the years that I've been in massage and in the massage industry. And I encourage you to check it out. I also encourage you to book a massage online with Living Kinetics. If you have any questions, go ahead and email me. Go ahead and give me a call, and I'd be more than happy to answer anything. Thank you so much for hanging out for today's video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.